Hello, hello, hello. It's Knits for Sanity and welcome to day 11 of my holiday celebration using the Add More Zest Zesty Advent Diamond Painting, which we're almost getting toward halfway done. I can hardly believe it. And this is my second to last day of my 12 days of Christmas 2022 Advent. This is the first year that Add More Zest did an advent calendar like this with the gift advent. There was the 24-day, but it sold out super fast, and I just feel really lucky that I was able to get the 11-day. I have really enjoyed it, and I think and I hope that it was well received enough this year by everybody that Add More Zest will do it again next year. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm really sad that tomorrow will be my last day. But here we go. Let's open up day 11. Woohoo! Look at the washi tape. Look at this. Oh, and it's all color themed the same. Let's turn this one around. So we have all of these beautiful blues. We have mermaids and fish scales, and then just some pretty blue, smaller washi tape. Cute. That mermaid is a really cute washi tape. Oh, thank you so much, Add More Zest. Super duper cute. One more day, guys, and then that's it. I can't believe it. All right, so day 11, onto my diamond painting. Day 11 is way up in this corner, so I'm going to turn my painting again. And like I've said before, my squares are not on here nearly as perfect as what Rebecca at Add More Zest did. And I'm okay with that, because at the end, the whole painting will still get done. So that still works for me. And if you are brand new to this, the way that these videos work is I work on my painting for a little bit while I share some kind of holiday related story. And then I actually fast forward the rest so you can watch me on super fast speed while I finish up my square. And then I come back for usually less than a minute at the end just to show you the final product. And if I have any other last minute thoughts to share with you, I do that as well. So just sit back and relax for a little while I keep you company. Today, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about, what my childhood Christmas was like and my favorite Christmas. And hoping that by doing this, hopefully it will spark, hopefully, good memories for all of you. And I would love to hear about your own favorite childhood Christmas. I love hearing from you guys, and I love hearing about your own experiences. So if you would, I would love to hear from you in the comments, and just let me know, what was your favorite childhood Christmas? For me, well, first, maybe I should start with talking a little bit about what Christmas was like for me as a kid. So traditionally, what would happen is kind of dependent on the age, but because the church service depended on when we were really little, we did not do church services Christmas Eve or Christmas Day just because we were super little. But then as I got older, church services wavered between being Christmas Eve, like late afternoon or early evening even, to being Christmas late morning, but excluding the religious services that we attended. The one thing that did happen every year is we would go to my mom's side of the family for Christmas Eve. And my understanding, if I recall correctly, when my mother was growing up, that is really when she celebrated Christmas. It was a Christmas Eve thing. That's when they did their presents, was Christmas Eve night. I have mentioned before that my mom did not have Santa Claus growing up. She grew up in a Dutch Christian Reformed household, which most of you watching probably are not going to be very familiar with what that means. But Santa Claus was a no-no. I mean, Santa Claus, for what my mother grew up with, he's a fictional character, and he is not part of the actual, real Christmas story. And so my mom did not have Santa as a child growing up. And therefore, a few of my cousins did not have Santa Claus either. They kept with that same tradition of Christmas Eve gifts or even Christmas Day gifts, but no Santa. And I know a couple others did. In my mom's case, she married my father, who did grow up with Santa Claus. He went to a different denomination and was from a German family. And Santa Claus was something that he had as a kid and loved it. And so kind of like the arrangement, the deal when they got married is my dad said, I want to do Santa Claus. That's one of my favorite childhood memories. And my mom said, okay. So I did get to have Santa Claus growing up. But Christmas Eve, we would go to my mom's side of the family, which when I was really little ended up being most of my mom's side of the family yet. My mom came from a family of 6 children. And when I was super small, most of the family was still in the area or was still coming back every year to do Christmas with, like my grandparents. But as I got just a little bit older, family really started to disperse. And incidentally, 3 of my mom's siblings all ended up moving to Arizona. None of them living close to one another in Arizona, but they all ended up moving to Arizona in the end. And so that was 2 sets of cousins that moved to Arizona. One set had never been local to me since I was born, or they may have been when I was an infant. But the other set actually comes from a family that I did have one cousin that I was quite close with, and we always did get along. But by the time I was, I believe, 7 or maybe just turned 7, they did move across the country. They actually moved to California first, and then they ended up settling in Arizona. So Christmas Eve, I didn't have any cousins that I was particularly close to. And my mom's side of the family was always kind of a struggle for me. I didn't have any cousins that I was really close with. And so I spent the time generally alone reading a book. It just it wasn't great. But I did, however, really like my dad's side of the family. So Christmas Eve would be my mom's side, and we would do just little presents. It would only be a little present. There'd be a cousin exchange of names. And so you'd get one cousin that you'd have to buy a gift for. And that would not necessarily be the cousin that bought you a gift. You'd draw names out of a hat, and that was how you determined who you bought your gift for. The only rule was it couldn't be someone from your own family. So it couldn't be for a sibling. It had to be somebody from someone else's family. And that is how we did gift giving. And then my grandparents would have a very small gift for each grandchild as well. They had 16 grandchildren though, and they weren't like a super wealthy couple. Blue collar, raising 6 children. They were not rich, but they definitely had enough that they were always able to get us Christmas presents and small birthday presents every year, which, now that I am an adult, I really appreciate. And I know the kind of expense that was for them. And I think it's really neat that they were able to do that for us. But probably the most fun tradition on my mom's side of the family is before we opened gifts, we always sang Christmas carols. And generally they would be your religious carols and hymns. But the very last song that we would always sing was the Chipmunk song. if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should just look it up, the Chipmunk Christmas song. And we would always sing that song. That would be our last song. And then that was the signal that we were about ready to begin opening our gifts. And so that was fun. And that's kind of a neat memory and tradition from that time. So then we would go home, and of course it was always, well, we got to get to bed because Santa's coming. And it always felt like we got home so late Christmas Eve. And there were definitely times when we did get home kind of late, particularly when church services were early evening Christmas Eve. That was really, really hard because we wouldn't even be done with church till like 7:30 or something. And then to still go and do the family get together and stuff. But generally, I don't think we actually got home that late. It just felt like it because it was a really, really exciting day. And of course, it's really, really dark early Christmas Eve here. It's right after the longest day of the year. So it's dark early, which we're quickly approaching that now. It's quite dark by 5 p.m. now. Then it was being super duper excited, and I learned that Santa Claus wasn't real quite early on, thanks to a cousin of mine on my dad's side of the family. I think he learned this year that Santa wasn't real, and so he felt the need to, of course, pass along that information to his younger cousin, which he did. So I don't ever remember really believing in Santa. I know that I did when I was really small, and my parents will attest that, yeah, you did. But I was little by the time it was ruined for me by my cousin. So I would often stay up and try and listen to my parents taking down the gifts. And then, then you'd wait till they were done. And then I'd wait a little bit longer. I'd wait till I started to hear my dad snoring, because he was quite the snorer, still is. And then I would sneak downstairs, and the stockings were always there, and you could always kind of see what was poking out of your stocking. And then I would kind of look at the presents under the tree. You have to be careful. You can't really disrupt them too much. And of course, you can't make a lot of noise. But if you move them around too much, that's going to be a problem, because then your parents are going to know that you were down there kind of poking through the presents to figure out, which ones were yours. My mom would try and a lot of years do some kind of a mystery with it by putting down a different name, and you'd have to figure out what your nickname was on the package. And how I translated that for my own kids is I do special wrapping paper for each child, and each child has to figure out which wrapping paper is theirs. Speaking of which, I need to get some more wrapping paper, because one child I ran out of wrapping paper for last year, so I have to get more wrapping paper. And then we had a rule in our house: no waking up mom and dad until at least 7 o'clock in the morning. That was the rule. And so we had to wait until at least 7 before mom and dad would get up. And then we still always had to wait for my mother. I don't know what on earth she needed to do Christmas morning. This wasn't like, this wasn't a beauty pageant. There wasn't, you don't need to look pretty. I don't know. I have no idea. To this day, I still don't know. Because for me, for the most part, I get up and I brush my teeth and I run a brush through my hair or something real fast, and then I'm out on the couch. But it feels like my mother took forever to come downstairs. Meanwhile, my dad would start the fire. He would start the Christmas music playing in the background. And then eventually my mother would appear. Now, we still couldn't open gifts. We were still having to wait for that, because we always read the Christmas story before we opened gifts. And it was always a Christmas story directly from the Bible. The biggest way that we change it up over the years is we would maybe choose a different passage. You know, one year we'd read it from Matthew and then we'd read it from Luke. And really those are the best two accountings of the Christmas story anyway. So it almost always was just Matthew or Luke. And then when that was done, then we could begin presents. As things progressed, we were able to, like as years went on, we could open our stockings immediately. I do not recall being able to do that when I was really small. But as I got a little bit older, that was something, and that was, I think, finally my parents' way of getting us to calm down. Kind of like the Christmas pickle tradition, where you put up this Christmas pickle ornament in the Christmas tree with the hopes that the kids will then spend all this time trying to find the pickle. And whoever finds the pickle first gets to open the first present, you know, as a way to try and like contain this childhood excitement and force kids to be a little bit more patient. Well, we could open our stockings first while we waited for my mother to show up, while we waited for Dad to start the fire. And so then after the Christmas story is when we could begin opening presents. In my house, what I grew up with is every person opens one gift at a time. There is none of this, you all rip into the presents thing. That did not happen in my household. And it wasn't till I was with my husband's family first year for Christmas. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Why is everyone opening presents at the same time? I was very, very confused. I thought, like, doesn't everybody, you know, you all wait and see what did the person get for Christmas? And, you know, you ooh and you ah over it a little bit. And then you go to the next kid. And when I was really little, it would just be the kids first. We'd all open our presents. And then my parents would open their presents separately. But as I got older, it became, you know, a round robin thing with the whole family present. So it would be all five of us. We'd all have our turn to open a present. Sometimes if you got a lot of presents that year because your gifts were less expensive, because like I've talked about, my parents had a very set amount that they spent on everybody. Sometimes you'd open two presents together. My mom would try and wrap them so they'd be somewhat equal, which is something that I still do myself. And actually, I am more of a perfectionist about it than my mom was. I always make sure that my kids have the exact same number of presents to open every year. No matter what it is that they got, they'll have the same number of presents to open. So sometimes that requires finding a large box and putting 3 items in one box, but that's cool. It, to me, especially with 4 kids, because I also like doing the round robin approach with my children, but slightly different because my husband did not grow up that way. Typically, they all open one present at the same time, and then we all look at that one present together, and then they can move on and open their second present all at the same time. And usually they have 4 or 5 presents total from us under the tree. And then we would do that infamous breakfast casserole, which typically there'd be enough time that we would clear away all of our gifts, run those up to our bedrooms, and then we would get dressed, or usually, you know, we'd put on our new outfit that we got that day for Christmas. And usually for whatever reason, whatever clothing that we did get for Christmas, it was usually pretty comfy clothes, like a sweatsuit or something like that. And so we'd all run up to our rooms and put our presents up there and kind of look through those, and we'd put on our new outfit. And then we'd come down for that infamous breakfast casserole, which go back and listen to the first day to learn more about this infamous breakfast casserole situation. And that was my typical Christmas as a child. That's kind of what we did. Later in the day, most Christmases, except there was for sure one year that was an exception, but typically Christmas Day, my dad's brother and his family would come over, and they would either have my grandmother with them, or my grandma may have been staying at our house already, my dad's mom. And then they would come, and then they would take grandma away with them after they left. Because my aunt's family still lived where my dad was from, further downstate. And so they would typically do Christmas with her family Christmas Eve, just like we did with my mom's family. And then Christmas Day, they would usually come up by us because we always went to them for the day after Thanksgiving. And so they would do Christmas by us. There was one year that I don't know for sure what happened, or maybe that was the year that my aunt had her brain surgery. I don't recall, but that year they did not come, and my grandparents did come over later that day. So then it was Christmas with my dad's side of the family, which I did like my dad's side of the family quite a bit. They weren't quite as fun-loving like my mom's side of the family. They would often play games, and it would be really entertaining to sit there and watch the adults play these games together. They are more witty, more sarcastic, and my dad's family is pretty deadpan serious. So it was a very different kind of dynamic, but I only had 2 cousins on my dad's side, and because of that, we were closer, even though they were older, but it was just, I got along better with that side of the family for the most part, at least for the family get-togethers. And so that usually happened later on Christmas. Now, this got to be pretty long as I reminisced about my Christmases, which kind of surprises me. Once I got talking, I just kind of kept talking. So I didn't even get to tell you about my favorite Christmas yet. And so I guess that's what I will probably have to come back and talk to you about tomorrow. But I would love to hear about your childhood Christmas and what are some of the traditions that you grew up doing. If you grew up not celebrating Christmas, share that with me too. Did you celebrate Hanukkah? Are you Jewish or of a different religion? Maybe you grew up in Japan. I would love to know. Just write them in the comments below. And I will come back at the end of this video to show you this completed square. But right now, just sit back while you watch me on super fast speed. Day 11 is done. It's a cute wreath. Super cool. Couple of notes. First, I started recording after I did my initial part of the video a little late. So I'm sorry about that. You missed a chunk of the painting here. Also, I noticed much too late that a good chunk of it was not even on camera. So I'm sorry about that. So this wasn't the best fast forward video, but like I always say, hopefully you're busy working on your own stuff that you don't really notice the fact that I was mostly off screen. And then also, cute little side note, my younger two kids, being kids, they immediately wanted to look at their squares, which are based on their ages. So my daughter just turned 11, and she was so excited that hers was a wreath. And so I'm anxious to show her the completed square. I think she's going to love it. My son, on the other hand, who is 7, was a little nonplussed by the candles. I guess he's not a candle guy. But my daughter should love her wreath. So there we go. And this is probably my favorite square, is those trees. I love those trees. All right, guys. Well, like I always say, please practice kindness. You never know what someone's going through, so just be kind to others. And I hope that you receive the same kindness in return. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you again real soon.